So grateful that Rachel Bloom is here with us today. We always start our episodes of this podcast with talking about actors first agent, first job, how you got your SAG card, because for our community who's listening, getting those firsts when you're just beginning your career feels like such a daunting task. And every time they hear how someone else got their firsts, it, I think, allows them to open their mind to the idea that this business is not linear and their path is not supposed to be what it is not. So, with that being said, Rachel, how did you get your SAG card?
Well, and I'm going to apologize for listeners. I'm getting over a cold. So if my voice sounds ragged, that's why.
It sounds a little sultry.
It sounds sultry, but the musical theater people pleaser in me is like, I just want to let everyone know this isn't how I normally sound. So I got it's two things. So I became SAG eligible. I booked a spec voiceover for Sierra Mist, where I played a tree through my first commercial agent. This was in 2009, and it was a spec voiceover. So I went to a booth, I recorded it, and it was never used for a commercial, but it was going to be an animated Sierra Mist commercial. And I never saw it, so I assume they never made it. So I earned, I'm going to guess it probably was SAG minimum for the day, but that can't be right because I think I would have remembered a check that big. But whatever happened, I got a letter saying you are eligible to join SAG. And I was like, oh my God, the Screen Actors Guild. I've heard of SAG. I thought you could only join SAG when you're famous. And then I looked at the price and I was like, oh, I will not be joining SAG. Because I think at the time it was $2,000 just to join.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Maybe more. So I held off. And I moved to LA and I booked a Dunkin' Donuts commercial. About a year and a half later, held off. I kept holding off, honestly. I booked an episode of How I Met Your Mother. I booked a one-line role on that. I held off. And I think that must have been 3 jobs because I booked another commercial for T-Mobile. And I should say this is a span of 3 years we're talking about. So I'm not like booking commercials constantly. We're talking about sporadic bookings within 3 years. But I booked this commercial and my agent said, you're a must join. If you don't join SAG by the end of the day today, you're not booking this commercial. So I think I called my parents and was like, can this be my birthday present? I need to borrow $1,000 or something. So I was kind of forced at knife point to join SAG. And then the Writers Guild, I don't think you have to pay to join the Writers Guild. Or maybe I'm wrong. But anyway, those were my first kind of official acting bookings.
Being a must join sounds so intense. If you want to book this by the end of the day, you must join SAG. It sounds so hyper intense, right?
Well, because I'd done, I think, the equivalent of 3 SAG jobs without booking SAG. So I think they were like, hey, where's our money? And I didn't know. I was like, I'm going to let this ride for as long as I can, just because it was so much money to join. I would have paid SAG dues. It was the joining fee to join SAG that I just didn't have in my bank account. But anyway, I did.
That's amazing. I love that. You graduated from NYU Tisch, right?
Yeah.
Did they have a program where you sort of showcase yourself to agents? Is that how you got first reps, or?
They did have a program, so they had a couple of things. I had transitioned from the musical theater program to the experimental theater program. Long story short, I did a Tisch showcase where I did get noticed by some reps. That wasn't how I got any agents. I basically did a couple of interviews that didn't go far. I mean, I was kind of a mess, to be honest. I didn't really have my shit together. I don't know. I didn't have my process yet. I didn't have a good auditioning process. I was a mess. I had some mental health things I was still working through. So the point is, I think the few agency interviews that I did coming out of college, I personally wasn't ready for. I think other people were. I think I just gave bad interviews. The way I booked my first reps were, after that, I was doing stuff through the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater in New York, and a commercial agent saw me who basically was doing this thing where he was signing everyone at UCB at the time.
Oh, wow.
This is a thing some reps did around 2004 to 2009, 2010, where there would be all this really amazing unrepped talent, comedy theaters in New York and I think LA, and there would be these few reps who would kind of snap people up. And commercial reps can have a lot of clients at the same time. So that was how I got a commercial agent who would send me out on certain things. My first manager, I was in a friend's sketch. Her managing partner, I guess, repped the person I was in the sketch with. Anyway, it was kind of crazy because she saw this one sketch I was in. We were at this diner in New York and I just remember her like smoking. This was not in the diner, this was later, but I'll just never remember her smoking and saying, you're going to get me my beach house, which at the time I was like, I get this is what Hollywood is. But now, no, she was not a good manager. So I was 22 at the time. She saw me in the sketch. I hadn't yet really taken any on-camera audition classes. And she was like, let's send you out to LA to go on some auditions. I want to make you like a teen star. So I went on 2 auditions that she personally coached me on. She like basically line for line would sit me down and like coach me on these auditions. And then I went in, I was really nervous and I gave bad auditions and then she dropped me as a client, basically, after those 2 bad auditions. And then I finally did take my first on-camera auditioning class in New York after, and I was like, oh, on-camera auditioning is a whole separate skill. It was really touch and go. And then the thing that really got me on the trajectory I'm at now, and I mean, look, it all counts as part of a trajectory, right? But I'm a writer, and so I did this music video that went viral at a time when music videos could really go viral. And that got me a bunch of rep meetings in LA. And that was in about late 2010. And then that got me my first staff writing job on a TV show and also my first reps for going out for acting gigs. But really, I mean, honestly, so many of my acting gigs were synonymous with things that I wrote myself.
Yeah. Do you think when you took meetings after that music video went viral, do you think those meetings, because you obviously signed, do you think they went better because you were better at it, or that they just knew who was going to walk in the door, that they knew you already, they knew your work, they knew
I
your
knew what I
vibe?
wanted. Oh, no. I knew what I wanted to do. I mean, the difference between when I was graduating from college, I was in a place where I was like, do I want to be an auditioning musical theater actor or do I want to be doing comedy? And so I was in kind of this split place. Like I remember I talked to this guy at Abrams and I don't remember the interview. This was after my college showcase, but I remember kind of like going back into his office, be like, oh, do you also have writing representation? He was like, yeah. I think he could tell that I was kind of figuring out what I was doing. So by the time that I was interviewing for reps in 2010 after that music video, I was very clear in that I wanted to do a lot of things. So I came in with a spec script that I'd worked on. So I was like, I want a staff. I can also be an auditioning actor because I'd also at that point taken audition classes. I wasn't perfect, but I at least could confidently say I can go into a room. I know how to audition. I had already had a sketch show up at the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater that I wrote, which I hadn't had when I was doing those post-college interviews. So I just knew what I wanted from my career. It was just different. I was going in having competitive interviews. Again, like it was miraculous. I had this video go viral and suddenly all these people wanted to rep me. It was amazing. I'm still astounded by it. So I was going with all these kind of competitive interviews for managers and agents as opposed to before, wasn't really competitive. It was kind of one at a time. It was apples and oranges. And I would say it's very specific to me, but everyone's path is very specific. And look, here's what I'll say is I'm coming to this. I mean, I'm trying to count what are the jobs I've booked through auditioning. I booked those 2 commercials. I booked that T-Mobile commercial and then Dunkin' Donuts. I booked Trolls World Tour. That was through an audition. Everything else has been stuff I've written or stuff that I've been offered. And let me say, I'm still auditioning. I'm not offer only. I'll audition. And I've gotten very close on some things, but like they can only pick one person. So like to be an auditioning actor is really hard.
Absolutely. Have the things that you've auditioned for recently, they've all been self-tapes, right?
Actually, I did 1 or 2 where I had producer reads live on Zoom. And again, and you know what's interesting is I know for a fact I did great auditions. And I know for a fact that I was being considered. It's just, I mean, there's this one thing I auditioned for that Ariana DeBose got. We're very different performers, right? It's also been very interesting since then. I've been behind the audition table. And when I was starting out, I thought it was a matter of, oh, if you're talented, if you give a great audition, you're going to book it. No, there's so many talented people. It's really so bespoke to the role.
Yeah. I think just knowing that allows us to take some pressure off of finding the right thing, doing all the work, and then the gods are smiling down and it all comes together in this perfect thing. It allows, for me anyway, the idea to let go of that. Just let go.
Yeah. And look, I've coached with you before. You're a great coach. And I think that's something I was always working on with you. And something that was my general journey in TV and film auditioning was, oh, I don't have to put on, I can just be myself. I don't have to act out an emotion. And maybe that's bad habits that I learned in school or something. It's really just like you're in a room with someone talking. You don't have to worry about projecting. And that was something I had to work on for a while.
Yeah, I felt the same way. And after studying theater in college, there were 4 years of people, like 18 to 22, and we were playing all ages. We were playing the grandparents and we were playing the babies. I mean, I did experimental theater in college. I got born from an egg on stage. You know what I mean? We're doing all these things. And then to go in and just be a regular person in an audition, I was like, mother fuck, I don't know how to do this.
Yes.
And I would do a voice and I do a thing. And I was like, I got to do all this stuff. And it just was not fruitful. Yeah.
They didn't work on like just being yourself, because 99% of the roles. Yeah. I mean, I have a lot of thoughts on theater school. There was an optional thing at NYU called Stone Street where I could have taken, which is a semester where you just worked on film and TV auditioning. I really think that acting school should have a much bigger film and TV component in general. I really think it should be mandatory to work with the film department and be in a short film so you can learn, how does it feel to be on a set? You're not on a stage. You don't have to project. The camera is in your face, but you have to pretend that you're just in a room with someone and you have to stand on the market. You can only really learn by doing. And that's also why auditioning is a different skill than, frankly, being on a set. Because on the set, you have multiple takes. When you're auditioning, it's just you. It's very unnatural. And I was talking to an actor who's like offer only. She's like a big deal. And I asked her at one point, do you still audition? And she was like, no, that's a whole skill set that I'm not working on. And even though I've been behind the auditioning table, I still get anal over my self-tapes. I've gotten better, but like if there's a take of a self-tape and I'm like, I don't feel that, I'm like, no, stop it. Stop in the middle. We'll do it again. It's hard to not get in your head. Acting's weird.
Yeah. I've always said auditioning is kind of like acting, but it's actually just a completely different sort of art form. And with that art form comes a lot of like, it's a mental art form of sort of letting go, but seeing yourself and all that stuff. How did you first come to our studio, Rachel?
Actress and friend named Stevie Nelson, I think, recommended you guys.
Oh my God. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I was looking for a good on-camera place in LA that wasn't Leslie Kahn for numerous reasons.
Had you?
I had not worked with her. Leslie Kahn was the only name that I'd heard.
Yeah.
And I heard that Stan Kirsch would be more my temperament speed.
That's pretty rad.
Is Leslie Kahn still a thing?
Yes.
Because I know Stan had studied with Leslie, I believe.
Yeah, that's where I met him. He was teaching there. And there was a reason why there was a split, right?
Right.
I have this memory of the very first time that we coached together. And I actually went into my email to see if my memory was somewhat right. What I remember is you coming in and you had 2 auditions. And one of them you were like, this character has a unibrow. I want her to have a unibrow. Oh, I should say, there are times people tell me things I've told them as a teacher or as a coach, and I'm like, I have no recollection of that. That does not sound like something I would say.
I gotta say, I have no recollection of this, but go on.
So you came in and you were like, I want this character to have a unibrow, and I don't have that. I was like, I have a brown eyeliner. You were like, this is perfect. So I looked it up in my email. This was 2012, and it was super fun night.
Yes.
You were also auditioning for the untitled Louis C.K. project.
No. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Okay, now, yes, this is all going back. So the super fun night, right, her friends were dorky. So I was like, how do I make myself look quote unquote dorky? And I should say unibrows are beautiful. The Louis C.K. project was funny because at the time he'd had Louis, they dug up a rejected multicam from him years earlier, and we're now making this a pilot. And I think it was about like hipsters working at a vintage store.
Uh-huh.
Oh, wow, you're really blowing my mind. I booked neither of those, nor did I get called back. It was funny. The first time I ever got, and this is really telling, the first time I ever got asked to test, because I was called back a couple of times for things, but the first test I ever got, it was 2 things simultaneously. And I couldn't actually take either of them because I was pretty sure the pilot of Crazy Ex-Girlfriend was going to get filmed. So I walked into a room and I was relaxed. I was myself because I had turned off the part that was like, I need this, I need this.
Yeah.
That's the hardest part about auditioning, is turning off the part, I need this, and tricking yourself into just being yourself. I've occasionally coached with this guy, Jack Plotnick, who, I don't know if you've heard of, he's a great actor, great coach. He said something really, I hope I'm not giving away his proprietary coaching, but he said something really smart, which is pretend when you're doing an audition scene that you're on set, you've done all the takes, and they go, okay, Rachel, we have everything we need. This one's just for you. Do whatever you want. We already have it. Just have fun. If you can go into auditioning pretending that that's it, the way it changes energy, you go in acting like you don't need it, which is so hard because you need a job. One of the most famous musicals in history has the refrain, I really need this job. Oh God, I need this job. I've got to get this job.
Yeah. Jack Plotnick has like these affirmations, maybe.
Yeah.
And I sat next to him once at an audition. It was like a commercial audition. And I saw him pull it out and do the affirmations. And I was like, oh my God, he does it. He does it himself. I was so in awe of the process that he has.
I think it gives him a structure and like I mean, God, I haven't done an in-person audition in a long time. Are they doing in-person auditions at all anymore?
No, no.
Pretty stunning. So the good thing is you lose the butterflies. I auditioned for a guest spot on New Girl in like 2011. And I got into the audition room and sitting there was Maria Fair. And it's funny, now she's like a friend of mine, but I was like, oh my God, Maria fucking Fair's here? I'm not booking this. And like that intimidating thing of seeing all the names ahead of you on a sheet, the fact that that's not part of auditioning anymore, I like that because that was always really terrible. I don't know, but I know some people who really like in-person auditions.
I'm not one of them. So I'm pretty cool with the way things are. Absolutely. But when you came into coach and you were like the unibrow, I felt like I loved that you had this idea, this vision. It felt like you were really connected to like an instinct. I have this gut feeling about the character and I'm going to sort of follow it.
Yes, I think what I imagine we worked on, and a thing that's kind of been part of my acting journey is, okay, I have an idea of the character. How do I then infuse that into what I'm doing and not act at what I think they want? Because that's sometimes the problem, right? Where I'm like, oh, I know exactly what they want. And what I'm actually picturing is not me, but I'm picturing like a different person. And so then I'm trying to do an impression of that person. It's like, well, that's never going to be good. So that's always a trick. And so I imagine that's what we worked on. And again, I didn't book it, but that was always something that I was working on and that I continue to work on. And I think that being in a show for 4 years that I wrote, part of my auditioning technique now is at a certain point to pretend that I wrote the stuff. And I think for anyone out there who writes their own stuff, just try tricking yourself into being like, oh yeah, no, I wrote this. It's fine.
I think that's genius. I talk about auditioning and acting all the time. I love this and I love what I do. And I also do it. That's my job. But I have not heard that one ever before. I'm going to borrow it and share it.
No, please, please. And it comes from, I think, coming from a writing, acting your own characters place. Why is it so comforting to act your own characters? Oh, it's because you know exactly what this line is and what the intention is behind it. And so if you can trick yourself, I find that to be very helpful.
That's incredible. I'm always trying to figure out ways to trick myself. It's not as scary as it is. A phone call shouldn't make the heart race like end of the world type thing.
The feeling of being on set for 4 years, like that has translated into when I'm actually on a job, not feeling like the words are somewhere else, but that taking ownership over the words, that is really important to me.
There were two other things that I had written down that I really wanted to talk about, but I'm being sort of pulled elsewhere. Let me just sort of touch on these because they came to mind immediately when we reached out to you to chat with you on the podcast. When I asked you a bajillion years ago about Fuck Me, Ray Bradbury, I asked something to the effect of like, how did you literally do it? How'd you get like the people together and the guts to like put something out there and be like, I'm spending days on this and I'm going to ask people to do this and we're getting the cameras. How did you sort of do that? And you said to me, when I was in college, we just did things. All the time we were making things and doing things and we would put things together. I think you were describing actually like a law of physics, which is inertia. Like I just sort of like stayed in motion and I did these things and I was surrounded by people who did things and created. If you have a different thought on that today, that'd be awesome. But do you think that's part of...
That's my same answer is I didn't do that in a vacuum. I was just talking about this with my husband the other day. So I've been with my husband for about 16 years and he and I met doing comedy. I know, very, very basic.
I love that.
All around me in both college and at the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater, people were making things and filming the things they made. Actually, my boyfriend, now husband, I remember I was talking to him one time. He was 5 years older and he got his first agent. He and his writing partners, which at the time was a 3-man comedy team called Chubby Skinny Kids. It was him. My husband's name is Dan Greger, his writing partner, Doug Mand, and then Adam Pally, who I'm sure you know, who he's still really close with. They wrote a pilot and filmed a sizzle reel. They sold it to NBC and that got them agents. Because at the time, very few people were filming their stuff like that. But they were inspired by the people around them who were filming stuff for the web because this was the burgeoning internet sketch comedy days. And so I was watching everyone around me, including my boyfriend, frankly, film what they write to amazing results. And so it didn't feel like a leap. I think the scariest part was maybe like it was a song, so no one else had done that. And that's how I met my writing partner, Jack Dolgen, because he knew my husband, because I needed a professional musician to help me record this song and do the song. But I wasn't in a vacuum. I was surrounded by people, and I don't know, with anything I've created, half of success is, I don't know the ratios, but part of success is ability, but also it's just right place, right time. People say, oh my God, Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, you co-created the show. How did you do that? It's like, well, I'm not the first person who ever co-created a show, nor was I the first person to make music videos online. For every like writer or comedian or actor in Hollywood, there are just as many amazing rejected shows that would have been your favorite show and would have gotten that person a Golden Globe. At the time they pitched it, there wasn't an executive at a network or a studio who could see it, or it wasn't part of their mandate or whatever. I think I take credit for myself, but also when you're surrounded by amazing, ambitious people, it's hard to not have that be infectious.
Note to self, surround myself with people who are doing it.
And people who are better. I remember I had a note from an improv teacher one time, and I've been back and forth with improv. Improv is something that I love doing, and then I don't do it for 2 years, and then I come back, I'm like, oh, I love it. But I had an improv teacher who once gave me the note, surround yourself with better improvisers, because that's the way you get better. And there's a humbling of yourself that has to happen. And I got to say, the first year or so I was in LA, I think there was a part of me that didn't want to coach because I didn't want to see the LA competition out there. And I didn't want to necessarily know if I was bad. Because I'd done this class in New York. I felt good about it. And then I got out to LA and I had an agent. So it's like, oh, well, I should be talented now. I have an agent. And when I finally got into class, it was humbling, especially watching yourself on camera. There's no lying when you're rewatching your audition tape on camera. Like, that's how you audition.
When I was first in class, I was like, that's bullshit. Like, I'm bullshitting right there.
Yes.
There's nothing fucking real about that.
Yeah.
That was a rude awakening. Because when you do theater, you do the thing and then you like, and people applaud and then you feel your heart full and then you go home. And it's a living, breathing thing and that's what it is. And you never have to watch the fucking dailies.
Exactly.
Okay, so one of my favorite things that you've done recently is Reboot.
Me too.
I was blown away by it, and there was something so meta about watching you and Paul Reiser, who was playing a character, playing your dad, talk about comedy and what makes comedy. And you guys are working to reboot something from the 90s. Paul Reiser was on a sitcom in the 90s, and it was rebooted. And also now, Rachel, you are guest starring on Frasier, which is rebooted from the 90s. Like, it all just feels like I'm solving a crime, and like all the puzzle pieces, like I finally got the red string to the right person. Like, it all makes sense. What was the process of, and forgive me for talking about a project that was, I think, canceled before its time and no longer on the air.
No, I'm happy to talk about it. I love that show, and I'm still astounded we didn't get a second season.
In my opinion, I think it's like the time. All of a sudden, networks freaked out and they realized they had too much or whatever.
Yeah, it was the timing, and then also I think we kind of fell in this middle of the pack thing where if you succeeded, you were Abbott Elementary or The Bear. That's like, oh, it's on the top lists of everything. You know, there are always these like top 10 lists.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Or you're getting crazy numbers. And I think we fell in the middle of the pack. And it just wasn't enough for that specific, year, which I think we're talking late 2022 when the streaming crunch started to happen. So again, it's just luck.
Yeah. And timing, either beneficial or not.
Yeah.
But did you and he and then everyone sort of that was in the writer's room with you, some of like the greats, Rose Abdoo and Frank Melamed and George Wynn?
And then also my friend Kimya Bipornia was in there, and Kimya books all the time. I mean, those writer's room scenes were so amazing.
Really?
Yeah. They were really fun.
Did you all stay as scripted as possible, or was there room for improv? I mean, Kimya, I think, had these amazing like cutaways. They cut away to her a lot and she would like be doing a thing. So it felt like everyone was very active the whole time. But did you all improv at all?
There were improv takes. Not everyone there was necessarily an improviser. The joke writing was so good. I'm trying to think of any improvs I got in the show, because I would always try to do an improv take. Honestly, Steve and the writers knew what they wanted. And so we would always do a fun take. And I remember, I forget the scene, but Rose Abdoo's character, she was a crass kind of woman who'd seen it all.
Yeah.
And she had to say euphemisms for vagina. And Rose, just for fun, because Rose is an improviser, she actually brought in a list of all of these really silly vagina euphemisms. And when she said panty hamster, I couldn't film for a solid 10 minutes. I couldn't stop laughing. It was so funny. But I would also say, look, something with that show is, and I think this is most comedy, you don't have to be word perfect. You can phrase it. If there's a way of phrasing it that feels more natural to you, you could do that.
Yeah. That's great. They must have built a supportive enough set that you felt like you could.
Yeah, and it's something I checked in with, like, hey, how important is it to you that things are word perfect? And that's dependent on the showrunner. It's dependent on the boss. But if you're getting the joke through and there's a more natural way to say something, yeah, change it.
The things that y'all were talking about as far as what makes something funny, misunderstandings are funny. There's a point where you like sort of feel so self-righteous and then you fall on your face and everyone falls apart laughing. Sort of that sort of big comedic turn, the popcorn in the wash or the dryer or in the car. Yeah. Do you think that there are sort of comedy rules or things that are undeniably funny that we can go back to time and time again?
Well, what's funny is that episode is a debate between father and daughter about what is funny. And she's saying that stuff isn't funny.
Yeah.
Pratfalls aren't funny. And then, of course, she's basically proven wrong. Farts are always funny. My 4-year-old knows that farts are funny. I'm going to say farts are always funny. You know, the first joke that we've ever found documented from ancient Sumeria is a fart joke.
No.
Yeah.
Really?
It's a joke from thousands of years ago. It's written on like a slab, traced back to 1900 BC. It was something which has never occurred since time immemorial. A young woman did not fart in her husband's lap. It's the first joke that we have recorded. Farting. And it's about a woman farting. Isn't that great?
That's amazing.
So farts are funny.
Farts are funny. They stand the test of time.
And that's my final answer.
I think that's incredible. As you were filming Reboot, you guys filmed the show being filmed in front of a live studio audience. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you had never filmed in front of a live studio audience until Frasier.
Yes.
Yeah. How did it differ from a sort of fake live studio audience on Reboot versus like feeling the actual real thing?
Oh, Reboot made it. I mean, Reboot did such a good job at replicating it. And I actually found out that one of our ADs had actually called the AD of Frasier, who was very experienced in multicam, and picked his brain all about, okay, what does a multicam set look like? Tell me everything. So Reboot recreated it incredibly well. So then to be on set of Frasier and earnestly doing that was very, very trippy. I'll say the comedian on Frasier was better than the hacky comedian that was in Reboot. Something the comedian on Frasier liked is he also did a lot of kind of Frasier facts and trivia and also like telling the audience what was going on. Actually, I highly recommend go to a taping of a multicam if you can. You'll be there for 6 hours, so bring a snack, but you get to see actors do their thing and you get to see production and you get to see how it works. And it's multicam, so it's not going to be one-to-one with single camera film, but you get to see it. And what an opportunity. And years ago, just for fun, I went to a taping of the show Mom. It was great. I just wanted to see it.
That's incredible. I mean, really, that's kind of the only place you can see the greats of our industry work. Like you saw Alice and Janney work.
Yes, they were all amazing. They did it all in one take. It was really, really cool. And then when I did Frasier, something that was interesting that I realized was in my head, it's like, oh, it's theater acting, but it's also not, because when you're on a multicam, yes, there's an audience, but the camera's still here. You're not at the end of the day performing for the audience. You're still performing for the camera. It's this weird hybrid of theater acting and TV acting. Yeah, it was really interesting. And then it was a show night. It felt like opening and closing night of a play. It was so fun.
That's so wild. And multicam are still done today with the rehearsal process throughout the week.
Yes, but not all of them are filmed in front of an audience. My husband wrote on How I Met Your Mother, which was more of a hybrid show where they had more sets. They had some takes where it wasn't on the stage, right? Where they would be on a location. And so that was not filmed before an audience.
Was the hybrid style done so that they could use other locations, or?
It was so that they could do the feeling of a multicam, but also fit more scenes and be more ambitious with locations.
You had visited the Frasier set during the filming of the first season. Did that feel like it gave you a little bit of a foundation going into your guest star role in season 2?
Totally, yes. I mean, the creators of the new Frasier wrote on How I Met Your Mother with my husband. I've known them for years. So there was a friendliness there. It felt like a very kind set. But yeah, visiting that set really helped. I think the more you can be on a set, the more you can just get a feel of what that workplace is like, the more you can feel at home and not feel like an imposter when you actually have a job.
Even if you're acting opposite Kelsey Grammer?
Even if you're acting opposite Kelsey Grammer, yeah. It was really trippy because I'm a huge Frasier fan. So look, there are definitely moments where I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy. But it helps. Experience on a set helps.
So that's coming up soon, right? Frasier, I think you're in the next episode that drops, perhaps.
I think I'm in the 5th episode, which is going to drop October 10th.
And then your show comes out October 15th on Netflix.
Yes. Yeah. So that's my Netflix special comes out 5 days later. Yeah. That's something I've been working on for years. And I'm so excited for everyone to see.
Instead of writing it down or printing out a synopsis of it, would you mind telling us a little bit about it?
Sure. So it's called Death Let Me Do My Special. And the special actually starts out with a voicemail from 2020 that I'm leaving someone saying, hey, I think you're right. I think we got to cancel the tour and we got to push the filming of the special and let's just do it when the world is back to normal. And then it's 4 years later and I'm finally filming the special. This is the special that I wanted to do in 2019. And I start off by singing a very silly and raunchy song because I do like a mix of stand-up and musical comedy. And then something happens that completely reroutes the show and I have to talk about death.
Yeah.
And that's what the show is.
Wow. pieces of this show were written in 2019 and then sort of worked in the last 4 years.
So I tried to keep in material from 2019. It all went away. I mean, the one thing that's left is the first song in the show that then comes back around as this kind of very silly, frivolous 2019 material. That is still in there. Any other stand-up bit melted away.
Really?
Yeah. And I might use them for something else, but yeah.
Wow.
I had a director. His name's Seth Barish, and he directs all of Mike Birbiglia's work. He is a very accomplished actor in his own right and owns a very acclaimed acting studio and acting school in New York called the Barrow Group. So he was my director, and so he was great.
Wow. Is the show that you took on stage in New York and that you toured with a little bit, did it go through a lot of changes based on... Yeah.
I mean, the core of the show is always there, but if you saw the show in New York at the Bell House in 2022, and then you saw it again off Broadway in 2023, there were some big changes. And honestly, we were making changes up until I did it at Williamstown. So we filmed it at the Williamstown Theater Festival. In editing some changes we made, I implemented into my final run at Steppenwolf.
Wow.
So we were always pruning, always honing, always finessing.
I know that you had input from your director, or how do you...
I rewatch them.
Okay.
And then I also get notes from people I respect. So first of all, rewatching your own work, it's hard to do, but it's really helpful because I would get notes from my director and then I'd rewatch the show and I'd actually have a lot of the same notes. But look, my husband is always my unofficial writing partner. My husband and I are writing partners. We have a couple things we're actually working on officially together, but also in anything we do, we're each other's unofficial sounding board. So him and then Aline Brush McKenna, with whom I created Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, she came to see it a couple times and I was like, what do you think? And I earnestly asked her for notes. And then the spoiler alert is it's a one-person show. It's not actually a one-person show. It ends up being a two-person show. And that went through a couple of iterations. And actually, at times, my director played that role. That was also valuable to have someone there doing some of this scene work with me.
Wow.
So I'm always changing. I'm always honing. I'm always trying to look at my work from an outside lens and then asking people I respect for their thoughts.
It kind of goes back to having people in your life who are better improvers than you, or people who have honed one-person shows before, allowing them to not creating in a vacuum, like you said earlier.
And surrounding yourself with people who also understand what you're trying to do. So they're not giving you don't want to surround yourself with yes men. You want to surround yourself with people who are doing the same thing you're doing, but also understand what your intention is. And it's hard to find, but it's very important.
What do you want to work on next? I know you're right. You have projects that you're writing, but
yeah, I have a bunch of irons in the fire, or as actually Aline says, should say irons in the freezer. I have a couple TV things. I have a couple movie things. And so I want all those to be real.
Absolutely.
I'd like to take those from script to real. Yeah.
I love that. I can't wait to see like what comes next, because it's a little bit of like, ooh, which one's going to pop in which way?
And I don't know.
That's awesome. If you could go back and give your younger self who just moved to LA one piece of advice, what would that be?
Oh, I mean, I could only give myself the piece of advice that I'm still working on, which is forgive yourself.
I like that.
And she'd be like, what does that mean? I'll be like, you know.
She'd be like, you get it.
I'd be like, it just, that's what I would say.
Got it. I love that. 2 more quick things, Rachel. A million years ago in class, someone was trying to talk about like being on their breath and sort of like finding the ability to get all the way through a sentence without sort of running out of breath. And you raised your hand and you were like, I don't know if this helps or not, but one of my teachers said, breathe in through your pussy.
Yeah. You know what's interesting? I then went to a voice teacher where I was doing that pussy breathing thing. So the idea is you breathe almost down. And he was like, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm breathing into my vagina. He was like, no, breathe in through your diaphragm. And I was like, oh yeah, you're right. So it's basically, you know what it is? It's all the same breathing. It's diaphragmic breathing, right? If you don't know this, the way your lungs work, and I'm not a doctor, but from what I understand, the way your lungs work is when you breathe in, your lungs expand. You have a muscle called your diaphragm that is below your lungs. Your diaphragm goes down, pushes your belly out, right? Which is why we talk about taking deep belly breaths. If you breathe into your belly, you don't have lungs in your stomach. What you're doing is you're expanding your lungs so your diaphragm can go down. A teacher had said, if you want to expand even further, breathe into your pussy. Anyway, this voice teacher later said that was like kind of BS. I think what that breathe into your pussy helped me do was it kept me doing diaphragmic breathing, but just not in as good of a way. I think it makes sense for some people because a lot of people also talk about lower back breath, which I never really understood. I still understand the diaphragm.
I don't know. If it works for you, it works for you. You know?
Yeah. And I thought it was working for me. And then I went to this voice teacher and he was like, no, forget that. Just like just try some good belly breaths. And I was like, oh, yeah, that does feel better.
Well, since you've said that, I don't know, 12 years ago, I've been doing it. So,
Oh, really?
yes. Oh, yeah.
Does it help?
Absolutely. For me, yeah. Because it gets me just mentally thinking lower, 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 lower. Because I very much can talk like this when I get a little bit like, I don't want to be a bother. I don't want to be a pest. Like, I get in like a little bit of my Midwestern thing where it's just, and I'm not a trained singer, but I just talk from up here and I don't really breathe very deeply. I try
Right.
not to take up a lot of space.
I think you're doing the correct interpretation. Someone had told me try to like push the tampon out. And so I think what I had been doing is, in addition to low breathing, I was actually literally flexing my vagina, which doesn't, you're tensing a muscle. You're doing it the right way.
Ah, well, I was taught by the best. Thank you. I end every podcast episode with 10 questions. These are the 10 questions that were asked on Inside the Actor Studio. And in college, I would watch that show and be like, I can't wait till he asks me. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us. So I want to carry on that tradition.
Great. Okay. I have to say, if you ever get a chance to check out Caitlin Riley's live shows in LA at Largo, she does this kind of a pushed version of herself answering these questions.
I love her.
It's very funny.
Caitlin Riley, like the one who's like, hi.
Yeah.
Hi, Kate Riley.
Yeah.
Okay. I love her. And she's on all of these shows. She was on Loot. She was on Barry, like doing sort of this thing that she had found on social media.
Yeah, she's killing it.
Yeah. Okay. What is your favorite word?
Verisimilitude.
Verisimilitude.
That's how I use it.
What is your least favorite word?
It's funny, I haven't thought about these. Mountain biking.
Right.
Because I went mountain biking one time and it was the worst hour of my life.
What turns you on?
Calm authority.
Ooh, what turns you off?
BO. Bad smell.
What's your favorite curse word?
Probably motherfucker.
So good.
Yeah.
Right? What sound or noise do you love?
I'm going to be trite. My child's laugh.
That's
because
beautiful.
it actually is the greatest.
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. What is her name? Is it public?
I haven't made it public yet. Just
That's okay,
because of
let's not.
AI. Just because it's like a Pandora's box that I'm like, wait until she's a little bit older.
No problem.
I'll tell you, her name's crazy. It's really not. It's not like that big a deal. It's just like, believe me, this is a whole other conversation about children on social media. And if you choose to be in a public eye, what do you reveal about your child? It's a whole debate my husband and I have had. And it's an ongoing, imperfect debate.
Yeah. I understand. Well, what sound or noise do you hate?
Slurping soup.
What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Surgeon.
Really?
Yeah. I really love doctor medical stuff. Honestly, like a doctor or like an EMT. I just really like medical stuff.
What profession would you not like to do?
Math teacher, because
I
I'm
relate.
not good at math. And I would be dealing with a bunch of me's and I would hate me.
If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
We're all good. Totally get why you didn't believe.
That's brilliant. Rachel, thanks for being so generous with your time and your experience and sharing so much. I know you are so busy and it means the world that you would come and talk to us and share. And next time you write something, I'm going to come straight to the source.
Yes, please. I'll just send you something, of course.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And just to recap, your Frasier episode airs on the 10th.
My special comes out the 15th. Yeah.
The 15th.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So check it out.
Yeah, it's going to be a good week. Feel better soon.
Thank you.
Yeah. We'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon.
Thank you so much. Bye.